Life changes without asking for permission. An unexpected piece of news. A diagnosis that turns everything upside down. What once seemed certain, our body, our routine, our certainties, vanishes in a matter of seconds. It's then that we begin searching for something unbreakable, something that doesn't depend on the external. Zen mindfulness, practiced from a place of stillness, doesn't offer magical answers, but it does provide a different way to be with what hurts, without running, without fighting, simply being. In the midst of chaos, it becomes a deep root that anchors us, even when everything else seems to lose meaning. Fragility isn't the enemy we've been taught to fear. It's rather the most honest teacher we can encounter on life's path. It teaches us something that health, in its generous abundance, often fails to convey: that we are part of something far greater than our small plans, that impermanence isn't a flaw of the universe, but its most intimate nature, and that in accepting our vulnerability lies a strength we hadn't imagined possible. Imagine for a moment a tree in the midst of a storm. Its most rigid branches snap under the force of the wind, while the more flexible ones dance with the tempest, bending without breaking. Illness is our storm, and Zen mindfulness teaches us to be like those flexible branches, not to surrender to pain, but to find in flexibility a form of resistance that doesn't wear us down, doesn't exhaust us, doesn't consume us in the struggle. When we practice mindfulness in the midst of illness, we're not denying the reality of discomfort or pretending everything is fine. We're learning something far more subtle and powerful: to distinguish between the pain we experience and the additional suffering we create by resisting that pain. It's like the difference between being pierced by one arrow and then shooting ourselves with a second arrow of self-reproach, fear, and denial. The first arrow is inevitable. It's part of the human experience. The second, which causes infinitely greater suffering, is optional. This distinction isn't merely philosophical, it's deeply practical. When we direct our awareness to the present experience as it is, without the additives of our fearful mind, we discover that even pain has textures, rhythms, and intensities that shift. Nothing remains static, not even the most persistent discomfort. There are moments of relief, deeper breaths, unexpected instants of stillness that appear like small miracles when we learn to pay attention to them. Zen mindfulness invites us to become compassionate observers of our own experience. Not cold, detached observers, but intimate, loving witnesses to what unfolds within us. When physical pain arises, we can approach it with gentle curiosity. Where exactly is it located? How does it change with breathing? What thoughts emerge around this sensation? This approach doesn't magically make the pain disappear, but it transforms our relationship with it, turning resistance into acceptance and struggle into understanding. There's something profoundly liberating in realizing we don't have to be perfect patients, that we don't need to maintain a constant heroic attitude, that it's okay to feel fear, anger, or sadness about what's happening to us. Zen mindfulness embraces the full range of human emotions, recognizing that each has its place and its wisdom. Fear speaks to what we value, sadness to what we love, anger to our vital instinct rebelling against limitation. In this practice of loving observation, we begin to discover that we are far more than our sick body, far more than our worried thoughts, far more than our shifting emotions. There exists within us a space of pure awareness, a silent observer that remains serene even in the midst of the storm. This observer isn't indifferent to suffering. It simply holds a broader perspective, like the sky that can contain both stormy clouds and radiant sun without being altered by either. This spacious awareness becomes our most reliable refuge. When the body hurts, when the mind is restless, when emotions overwhelm us, we can always return to this inner space of stillness. It's not a place we have to reach through effort. It's where we already are, where we've always been. We only need to remember how to access it through conscious breathing, attention to the present moment, and loving acceptance of what is. Breathing becomes our most precious anchor. Amid the chaos of symptoms, treatments, and worries, we always have our breath as a faithful companion. Each inhalation brings new life. Each exhalation allows us to release what we no longer need. There's no need to change the natural rhythm of breathing. It's enough to accompany it with awareness, with gratitude for this simple yet fundamental miracle. Cultivating peace in fragility doesn't mean passively resigning ourselves to illness. It means finding a center of serenity from which we can make the necessary decisions for our care without being dominated by panic or despair. From this serenity, we can communicate better with healthcare professionals, listen more clearly to our body's needs, and maintain loving connections with those around us without fear monopolizing every interaction. The experience of illness has the power to awaken a sensitivity that lay dormant in the days of full health. It's as if we were musical instruments that, when touched by the wind of adversity, begin to produce sounds we'd never heard before. This new sensitivity isn't just toward our own suffering, but toward the entirety of the human experience, toward the invisible web of connections that binds us to all beings who have known pain, uncertainty, and vulnerability. When we find ourselves in a hospital bed, waiting for medical results, or when our body insistently reminds us that we don't control as much as we thought, something profound stirs within us. It's as if a door we hadn't noticed we'd kept closed begins to open, and through it enters a different kind of light, perhaps softer, but infinitely more honest than the one that illuminated our days of certainty. This light allows us to see with crystal clarity what truly matters. The worries that once consumed us, piling work, social obligations, petty rivalries, and resentments, reveal themselves as shadows that dissolve when we direct our attention to the essential. It's not that these things lose all relevance, but they take their proper place in the hierarchy of what truly deserves our vital energy. In the forced silence that often accompanies illness, when the accelerated pace of daily life comes to an abrupt halt, we discover that silence isn't empty. It's filled with a subtle but undeniable presence, a consciousness that observes without judging, accompanies without invading, and supports without smothering. This presence isn't something we need to seek outside ourselves. It's the most intimate nature of our awareness, revealing itself when the external noise finally quiets. Learning to inhabit this conscious silence is like learning a new language, the language of the heart that needs no words. In this language, a single glance can hold more comfort than 1,000 well-meaning phrases. A moment of shared presence can heal wounds that medicine cannot touch, and the simple acceptance of our condition can generate more transformation than years of fighting the inevitable. Zen Mindfulness teaches us that every moment, even the most difficult, holds a pearl of wisdom at its core, not an abstract wisdom we can store in our minds like information, but a lived, embodied wisdom that becomes part of our being. When we stay present with the nausea after a treatment, when we accompany anxiety with conscious breathing before a medical appointment, when we hold with love the sadness that arises from contemplating our limitations, we are extracting those precious pearls from direct experience. Each symptom becomes a message our body sends us, not necessarily a message we can decipher intellectually, but a subtler communication that requires us to develop a new kind of listening. It's like learning to interpret a text written in an unknown alphabet. At first, everything seems confusing and threatening, but gradually we begin to recognize patterns, rhythms, and internal logic with its own coherence. This bodily communication isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it manifests in the way the body relaxes when we find the right position to rest, in how breathing deepens, when we direct toward ourselves the same compassion we naturally offer a frightened child, in the subtle way pain changes in quality, when we stop resisting it and start accompanying it with gentle curiosity. Zen mindfulness invites us to become anthropologists of our own experience, studying with genuine fascination the customs and habits of our ailing mind. We observe how certain thoughts systematically appear during moments of discomfort, how emotions follow one another in predictable patterns, how the body responds to different kinds of attention. Not to judge or immediately change what we observe, but to intimately know the territory we now inhabit. This conscious exploration reveals something surprising. Even in the darkest moments, there's an innate capacity to find small refuges of peace. It might be in the softness of a blanket, the taste of a spoonful of warm broth, the caress of a breeze coming through the window. These refuges don't deny the reality of suffering, but they remind us that the human experience is always more complex and nuanced than our fears lead us to believe. Gratitude arises naturally when we learn to pay attention to these small, everyday miracles. Not a forced or artificial gratitude, but a sincere recognition that, even in the most challenging circumstances, life continues to offer us gifts. The gratitude born from Zen mindfulness doesn't deny pain or suggest we should be thankful for being sick. It's rather an acknowledgement that, alongside suffering, elements of beauty, connection, and possibility always coexist, which we can choose to include in our conscious experience. When we cultivate this grateful attention, we begin to notice how the texture of our days changes. Moments of discomfort remain real, but they no longer occupy the entirety of our field of awareness. Other elements emerge: the silent dedication of those who care for us, the unexpected solidarity of fellow patients, the compassionate professionalism of medical staff, the miraculous persistence of our body in its effort to heal. This expansion of awareness has a profoundly healing effect, not necessarily in the sense of physical cure, though that can sometimes happen, but in the sense of a deeper healing that transcends the body's condition. It's the healing of the separation that makes us feel isolated in our suffering, the healing of the fear that convinces us we're helpless victims of cruel circumstances, the healing of the resistance that exhausts us in unnecessary battles against what we cannot change. In this process of inner healing, we discover access to resources we didn't know we possessed, a strength that doesn't depend on physical power, a peace that doesn't require the absence of difficulties, a joy that can coexist with sadness without negating it. These resources aren't borrowed or temporary. They're an integral part of our deepest nature, revealed precisely when we need them most. Time takes on an entirely different quality when illness becomes our daily companion. Clocks still tick the same hours, but our perception of time transforms radically. Minutes can stretch like taffy during a pain crisis, while weeks of recovery slip through our fingers like water. This temporal alteration isn't a distortion we need to correct, but an invitation to discover a deeper dimension of time, a temporality not measured by chronometers, but by the quality of our presence. In Zen Mindfulness, we learn to distinguish between chronological time, that which divides existence into past, present, and future, and what we might call existential time, the eternal moment that opens when our consciousness fully settles in the now. When we're truly present with a sensation, a breath, an emotion, chronological time stops, or more precisely, reveals itself as the mental construct it always was. This experience of expanded present time has a profoundly healing effect on our relationship with illness. When we live constantly projected into the future, when will I feel better? What if I don't improve? How much longer will this last? Or anchored in the past. I didn't have these symptoms before. If I'd done things differently, when I was healthy, things were so different. We miss the only real opportunity we have to live, this exact moment. The present moment isn't necessarily easier or more comfortable than our mental projections, but it's infinitely more manageable. We can be present with nausea for 30 seconds, consciously accompany anxiety through one inhalation and exhalation, lovingly hold the sadness inhabiting our heart right now. What becomes overwhelming is carrying the weight of all past moments of discomfort and the burden of all future moments of potential suffering simultaneously. The practice teaches us to unpack these overloaded temporal bundles and relate only to what's here, now, in this specific moment. It's like learning to pack a backpack for a long hike. Instead of trying to carry everything we might need for every imaginable circumstance, we learn to carry only what's essential for the stretch we're walking right now. When we settle into the present, we discover something remarkable. Each moment contains exactly what we need to navigate it, not necessarily what we want or would have chosen, but what we need to grow, to learn, to develop qualities that lay dormant within us. Patience. We didn't know we had blooms in the long waits of medical treatments. Self-compassion develops when we learn to accompany our suffering without judgment. Humility deepens when we accept help from others without feeling diminished. This alchemy of the present doesn't automatically turn suffering into pleasure, but it transforms our relationship with it in a way that can be more valuable than any temporary relief. When we stop expending energy, resisting what's inevitable, that energy becomes available for something far more useful. Healing what can be healed, creatively adapting to what cannot be changed, and finding meaning and purpose even in the most challenging circumstances. Zen Mindfulness invites us to practice what we might call therapeutic presence with ourselves. Just as an experienced therapist offers their patient a stable, non-invasive presence that allows what needs to emerge to surface, we can offer that same quality of presence to our own inner experiences. We don't try to immediately fix everything that hurts or flee from what's uncomfortable. We create an inner space of acceptance where everything can be welcomed without judgment. This internal therapeutic presence has effects far beyond immediate relief. When our wounded parts, physical, emotional, spiritual, feel truly seen and accepted, something in them relaxes. The symptoms may not disappear, but the additional tension created by resistance eases. It's like the difference between having a contracted muscle and consciously tensing it further versus having the same contracted muscle, but allowing the rest of the body to relax around the affected area. In this state of relaxed presence, we begin to perceive nuances in our experience that previously went unnoticed. We notice that pain isn't monolithic, but has variations, rhythms, changing intensities. We observe that between two waves of discomfort, there are always pauses, however brief, where something eases. We discover that our emotions, too, have natural cycles. Anxiety arrives, peaks, and then dissolves naturally if we don't feed it with more worrisome thoughts. This detailed and loving observation of our inner processes gradually turns us into experts in our own experience. We learn to recognize early warning signs of an approaching crisis, develop personalized strategies for navigating the most difficult moments, and identify which thoughts, activities, or environments nourish us versus those that drain us. This intimate self-knowledge becomes a form of personalized medicine that no external protocol can match. Perhaps the most transformative aspect of settling into the present is that we begin to experience what we truly are beyond our temporary circumstances. When we're not lost in the past or projected into the future, when we're not fully identified with our symptoms or defined by our diagnosis, a sense of being emerges that transcends all these changing conditions. It's not that we deny the reality of illness, but we discover there's something in us that remains untouched by it. This untouchable dimension of our being isn't an abstract philosophical construct, but a direct, tangible experience. It manifests as a peace that doesn't depend on external circumstances, a joy that can coexist with sadness, a love that doesn't diminish despite suffering. It's the living testament that we are far vaster and more resilient than any illness can suggest. And this inner vastness is our most reliable resource for navigating any storm life brings. From this expanded dimension of our being, illness doesn't disappear, but its meaning changes. It's no longer just an unwanted interruption of our normal life, but also an opportunity to discover reserves of strength, compassion, and wisdom we might never have explored in more comfortable circumstances. This perspective doesn't romanticize suffering or suggest we should be grateful for being sick, but it acknowledges the extraordinary capacity of the human spirit to find meaning and growth even in the most adverse conditions. Illness has the unique ability to reveal the deeply interconnected nature of our existence. When the body weakens, when we need help with tasks we once did without thinking, when we rely on others for basic care, the illusion that we're self-sufficient islands navigating life alone dissolves. This revelation can initially feel humiliating to an ego accustomed to independence, but for a heart practicing Zen mindfulness, it becomes a doorway to a deeper understanding of what it truly means to be human. We discover we've been held all along by an invisible web of mutual care. The food that reaches our table has passed through countless hands. The medicine that relieves our symptoms is the result of decades of collective research. The hospital where we receive treatment exists thanks to the coordinated work of thousands of people. Even the air we breathe is a constant gift from trees we've never met. And the water that quenches our thirst has traveled through millennia-old cycles to reach us exactly when we need it. This awareness of interdependence isn't just an intellectual reflection, but a lived experience that profoundly transforms our relationship with suffering. When we understand that our pain is part of the universal human experience, that millions have walked similar paths, that others are facing challenges like ours in this very moment, something softens within us. We're not alone in this. Never have been. Zen Mindfulness teaches us to gradually expand the circle of our compassion, starting with ourselves and rippling outward like waves in a pond. First, we learn to direct toward our own suffering the same tenderness we naturally offer a loved one in distress. This self-compassion isn't self-indulgence or blind self-pity, but the simple, profound recognition that we deserve love and care precisely because we're suffering, not despite it. When we direct this compassion toward our ailing body, something remarkable happens. Instead of relating to it as an adversary that's betrayed us, we begin to see it as a brave companion fighting to keep us alive in difficult circumstances. Every cell is doing its best to function. Every organ continues performing its vital tasks despite challenges. Every breath is a miraculous act of collaboration among complex systems working beyond our conscious control. This new relationship with our body creates a form of healing that transcends medical cures. Though symptoms may persist, the internal war transforms into a cooperative alliance. Instead of cursing the body for its limitations, we begin to honor it for its resilience. Instead of punishing it with resentful thoughts, we nourish it with thoughts of gratitude. This shift in attitude doesn't magically cure illnesses, but it greatly alleviates the psychological suffering we add to physical discomfort. From this foundation of self-compassion, we can naturally extend our understanding to others who suffer. When we encounter another person in the hospital, see someone in the doctor's waiting room, or hear stories of illness in the news, they're no longer distant abstractions, but fellow travelers on a journey we know intimately. Their tears resonate with our tears. Their fears echo familiarly in our heart. Their small victories over pain fill us with a joy we didn't expect to feel. This expanded compassion becomes an unexpected source of strength. When we offer a smile to another patient, listen with full presence to a family member's concern, or send thoughts of well-being to someone we know is suffering, something awakens in us that transcends our own limitations. It's as if, by connecting with universal suffering, we also discover the universal love that's always existed as its natural response. Zen mindfulness shows us that this love isn't an emotion that comes and goes with our mood, but the fundamental nature of awakened consciousness. When we're not lost in self-concerned thoughts, when we're not fully absorbed in our personal drama, a natural kindness spontaneously arises toward everything we encounter. This kindness needs no reasons or justifications. It simply is, like the natural warmth of the sun that doesn't discriminate where to direct its rays. In the darkest moments of illness, when pain is intense and the future uncertain, this connection to universal love becomes our most reliable refuge. Not because it makes difficulties disappear, but because it reminds us that even in the deepest suffering, the capacity to love and be loved remains intact. It's like a light that doesn't go out no matter how fierce the storm, an inner compass that always points toward what's most valuable in the human experience. This realization fundamentally transforms the meaning of healing. We no longer seek only a return to a previous physical state, but aspire to a deeper wholeness that includes but transcends bodily health. It's the healing of the separation that makes us feel disconnected from the rest of life. The healing of the fear that convinces us we're alone in our struggles. The healing of the inner harshness that prevents us from freely receiving and offering love. When we cultivate this compassionate, connected perspective, even the most challenging aspects of illness can become opportunities to deepen our humanity. Vulnerability teaches us humility. Dependence reveals the beauty of interdependence. Suffering opens our heart to others who suffer. It's not that we need to be sick to learn these lessons, but when illness comes, we can choose to receive it as a teacher, however stern. This choice, to find meaning and growth even in the most difficult circumstances, isn't a denial of suffering's reality, but its deepest alchemical transformation. The lead of pain doesn't turn into the gold of superficial happiness, but into something far more valuable. The compassionate wisdom that can only be born from consciously walking through darkness and emerging not as victims, but as more complete, tender, and connected human beings. At the end of this journey through the paths of Zen mindfulness in the company of illness, we arrive at a perhaps paradoxical understanding for a mind accustomed to seeing suffering only as something to eliminate. It's possible to find a form of wholeness that includes, rather than denies, our limitations and vulnerabilities. This wholeness isn't the result of conquering illness or returning to a previous state of perfect health, but something far deeper and more enduring: the conscious integration of our entire human experience, including its most challenging aspects. When we've walked far enough along this path of awakened consciousness, something fundamental shifts in our relationship with reality. We no longer divide life into good experiences to pursue and bad ones to flee. Instead, we develop what we might call a sacred equanimity, a capacity to receive each moment with the same open presence, knowing that every experience, pleasurable or painful, easy or challenging, expected or surprising, has something to teach us about the deep nature of existence. This equanimity isn't emotional indifference or passive resignation. It's a mature form of love that can embrace the totality of who we are and what we live without needing everything to align with our preferences. Like a mother who loves her child in moments of joy and difficulty alike, we learn to love our entire life, including the chapters we never would have chosen to write. In this attitude of inclusive love, illness ceases to be merely an interruption of our personal story and becomes an integral part of our spiritual growth, not romantically or masochistically, but with the sobriety of someone who's discovered that human consciousness has an extraordinary capacity to extract meaning, beauty, and wisdom even from the most barren experiences. Like desert plants that have learned to bloom in extreme conditions, we too can cultivate flowers of understanding that only grow in the seemingly inhospitable terrain of adversity. This inner blooming isn't always visible to outside eyes. It might manifest as a patience we didn't have before, a new ability to be present with others' suffering without feeling overwhelmed, a deeper appreciation for simple pleasures we once took for granted. Sometimes it reveals itself in how we hold our own pain without adding unnecessary drama, or how we accompany others in their difficult processes with a presence born of having consciously walked through our own darkness. Zen mindfulness teaches us that this silent transformation is, in many ways, more valuable than any spectacular cure. While physical health may come and go based on factors largely beyond our control, the compassionate wisdom we develop through conscious practice becomes an intimate possession no one can take away. It's like a treasure we carry with us always, invisible to the eyes, but tangible to the heart that's learned to recognize what truly matters. When we look back from this mature perspective, we can begin to see our journey with illness as something more complex than mere misfortune. Without denying the real suffering we've experienced or minimizing the genuine losses we've faced, we can also recognize the unexpected gifts this path has offered. Deeper compassion for ourselves and others, a lived understanding of what truly matters, a more intimate connection with our simultaneous vulnerability and strength. This integral perspective doesn't claim we should feel grateful for being sick, but it invites us to recognize that we're capable of finding gratitude even in the most challenging circumstances. Gratitude for the awareness that allows us to witness our own experience, for the love we receive from others in our most vulnerable moments, for the opportunity to discover reserves of resilience we didn't know we possessed. In moments when the future feels uncertain, when treatments aren't yielding the expected results, when fear revisits us with its familiar entourage of worries, we can return again and again to this firm foundation we've built through practice. Not as a refuge to hide from reality, but as an inner center of gravity from which we can face any challenge with greater serenity and clarity. This center isn't something we achieve once and for all. Like everything in life, it requires constant cultivation, renewed attention, daily commitment to the practice of conscious presence. Some days, it will be easier to access. Others, it will seem to have vanished entirely. But every time we return to the breath, choose acceptance over resistance, or direct compassion toward our suffering instead of judgment, we strengthen this fundamental capacity to live consciously, no matter the external circumstances. Ultimately, Zen mindfulness in the face of illness returns us to a simple but transformative truth. The deepest peace doesn't depend on having a perfect life, but on developing a perfectly honest and loving relationship with the life we have. In this unreserved honesty, in this unconditional love for our imperfect, transient human experience, lies a form of freedom that no external circumstance can grant or take away. This inner freedom is our most precious gift to ourselves and the world. When we walk through life carrying this inner peace, we automatically become a healing presence for others who suffer. Not because we have magical answers to their problems, but because we naturally radiate the understanding that it's possible to keep the heart open even in the storm, to find meaning in apparent meaninglessness, to love life with all its imperfections and fragilities. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the paths of Zen mindfulness in the company of illness. I hope these reflections have offered you some comfort, understanding, or inspiration for your own path. If this content has resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe to the Pure Zen Life channel to continue exploring these deeply human themes together. Your presence in this community of mutual support gives every shared word more meaning and healing power. Until our next reflection, may you find peace in every conscious breath.